At the United Nations Earth Summit in 1992, biodiversity was defined as variability among living organisms from all sources, including inter alia, terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystems, and the ecological complexes of which they are part of. This includes diversity within species, between species, and of ecosystems.
The new UN report on biodiversity concluded that 1 million species are facing extinction. We're losing natural habitat and marine diversity at an alarming rate.
For instance, one of the main threats to biodiversity addressed in the US is unsustainable and illegal overexploitation of natural resources, especially wildlife, timber, and fish.
That protecting humanity means protecting biodiversity, because we human beings fundamentally depend on the diversity of life. We are part of this ecosystem, but we are not conscious enough of the extent to which we benefit from it.
The Millennium Ecosystem Assessment defined ecosystem services as the benefits people obtain from ecosystems. These include provisioning services such as food, water, timber, and fiber, regulating services that affect climate, floods, disease, waste, and water quality, cultural services that provide recreational, aesthetic, and spiritual benefits, and supporting services such as soil formation, photosynthesis, and nutrient recycling.
Predominant places that emerging diseases are coming from are in Eastern North America and Western Europe. And we think this is because there's been a lot of land use changes in these areas and because agriculture has intensified in these areas. That's why we're getting emergent diseases from these places. So biodiversity hotspots and parts of the world that emergent diseases are emerging from are two different separate entities. Some emerging diseases are coming from biodiversity hotspots, but by and large, not the majority.
An ecosystem rich in biodiversity dilutes the transmission of pathogens, which is also known as the dilution effect. Some species cannot transmit the pathogen even when contaminated. These species are all the more present as the ecosystem in which they evolve is rich in biodiversity. Current research gives us every reason to think that these species will disappear first, being generally less abundant and therefore more vulnerable to extinctions. This increases the likelihood to contract diseases.
For example, deforestation, habitat fragmentation or modification, and the accompanying loss of structural diversity can lead to changes in human contact rates with a variety of pathogens and disease vectors. Many of these infectious agents, known as zoonotic agents, use multiple species for their transmission. However, the upheavals observed in terms of biological diversity can disrupt this natural cycle of transmission. This is the case of those propagated by vector species, which are insects such as mosquitoes or ticks that feed on the blood of individuals.
Of all Aedes-borne diseases, dengue fever has been most frequently modeled in the context of climate change. Dengue has reemerged since the 1980s and is now one of the most common vector-borne diseases worldwide. Dengue is transmitted to humans primarily by the Aedes aegypti mosquito. According to a study prepared for the IPCC report, limiting climate change to 1.5 degrees Celsius could prevent 3.3 million dengue cases per year in the Americas.
It is therefore crucial to encourage policymakers to implement conservation measures, mitigation, restoration, and other means of forests, natural parks, and various ecosystems, as well as restrictions on overexploitation of resources in the greater Northeast to begin to tackle this major ongoing and aggravated problem.